أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The articulation point that we're going to cover today is the letter Ra. And as you know, letter Ra is the letter Ra is sometimes heavy and sometimes light based on the haraka on the letter Ra. If the Ra has a fatha or a dhamma, then the letter Ra is pronounced heavy. And when it has a kasra on it, it's pronounced light. There are also rules to the pronunciation of the letter Ra with a sukoon, and that will be discussed later when we do the rules, inshallah. So today's topic is on the makhraj of the letter Ra. We know the letter Ra is a tip of the tongue letter, right? Toraf al-lisan, the Toraf al-lisan letter, but the only difference is it's just not the tip, it's also a small surface area of the tongue that is involved in the pronunciation of the letter Ra. So when I look at the tip of the tongue, just look at this is my drawing of the tongue. It's a small drawing. It's the tip over here. It's the tip plus a small surface of the tongue. So it's also a small surface on the top of the tongue, which is involved in the articulation of this letter. Okay, so I'm going to erase this and show you more clearly. Okay. Now, if you look at the tip of the tongue, it's placed at the gums of the central upper incisors, the biting teeth, right? So it's placed at the gums of the biting teeth here. This is the point in blue I'm showing you. And it's a tip plus the surface of the tongue. Okay, so this is very different compared to the makhraj of the other letters of the tongue. Here, it's not just the tip, it's also the top surface of the tongue that's involved in the articulation of the letter Ra. Okay, now Ra can be both the raqiq and tafkhim based on lowering or raising the tongue, the back of the tongue. Okay. The other thing that we notice about Ra is when you pronounce Ra, there is you don't press the tongue against, you don't press hard with your tongue against the gums of the top incisors. Okay, you lightly touch it. Okay, and there is a gap between the point of where the tongue touches and the middle of the tongue. Like if you look at the tongue, there is a small gap here in blue. Again, I'm showing it to you, which lets the sound escape. Okay, which lets the sound escape. So the tongue touches the gums, and there is a small gap in the middle of the tongue, which lets the sound escape. And that's how you have the sifa of tikrar. That is a light tikrar, not a heavy tikrar. If you close that gap completely, there'll be no tikrar. Okay, tikrar is the r in the sound, the small reverberation, the small quick flappy movement of the tongue, which makes the sound to reverberate. Reverberate means r. If I close that opening, the sound will become, the trilling will become too heavy. Ar. This is because I have pressed too hard. I've pressed my tongue too hard against the gums. Okay, and I am closed off that opening. Okay, I have closed off that opening, and that's why when you exaggerate the tikrar, then it is not right. Okay, so let's look at how they are explaining it here. The tip of the tongue needs to press. Okay, the strike is a very strong word here. We'll say it has to press, not hard. Okay, it doesn't press hard. It presses against the gums to produce the sound of the letter Ra. Okay, there should be no trilling. There is reverberation, there is tikrar, but it's not exaggerated. Okay, when you pronounce this letter. So better look over here is, if you look at this here, the space, there's a space that is that the space let part of the sound pass when we pronounce raw. Let me again erase it to show you the space. Okay, so the tongue is actually, if you see the tongue here, if you see the tongue over here, it's this part of the tongue. Can you make, okay, I think I didn't get that. This part of the tongue here. Okay, this part of the tongue, there is a slight gap and the sound escapes from here. Okay, let me see if I can get another diagram, because I know there is one in the Sifatul Huruf where they show the Sifa of here of Tikrar also. One second, let me just show it to you. Okay. Okay, here. Yeah, this is a better way to see it. Okay. Okay. Now you see that the sound comes out from this opening here. This opening here is from where the sound comes out, and this makes the tikrar in the sound, and it's not an exaggerated sound. Now raw can be heavy or light. Raw can be heavy or light based on how you place the back of your tongue. If the back of the tongue is raised up, the raw will be heavy. If the back of the tongue is lowered, remember always, when does a sound become heavy? When you raise the back of your tongue. That's what makes the sound heavy, right? So when the back of the tongue is raised up, the sound becomes heavy. And when you lower the back of the tongue, the sound becomes light. Okay? So you can see that in this picture here. The tongue is heavy. The heavy raw is the back of the tongue is raised up here. And for the light raw, the back of the tongue is lowered. So that's how you make raw heavy. Okay. Okay. So in raw, if you remember, raw is a letter where there is partial stopping of the sound and there's partial running of the sound. Okay, there is partial stopping and partial running. The partial running is from the middle of the tongue, okay, where the sound escapes. And the rest of the sound is confined in the mouth. We just saw the picture there with the arrows, and you saw that the sound is running from the middle. So that's the only outlet. The rest of the sound is confined in the mouth. So you have a partial stopping and partial running, which makes the letter moderate in strength. It gives a moderateness in the strength of the letter raw. So you don't make the letter raw very strong. It's moderate in strength. And remember, there is no air. There's no air in the sound. There's no air running with the sound. The sound is partially stopped and partially it is running. And that's why it has a sifa of tawassut. Okay, it has a sifa of tawassut. Moderate in strength, because the sound is both stopped and also it is running. There is no air in the sound, and the sound of raw can be tafqim or tarqiq based on the position of the back of the tongue. I hope that's clear, sisters. And don't forget, when you say the letter raw, remember how to pronounce it. You place a hamza before raw, give the raw a sukoon, and say ar. Ar. Don't make the trilling. Don't say ar. That's wrong. There's light trilling to the sound. Ar. That's it. Not more than that. Okay? Jazakillah khair.